got up in the morning, went over to the hospital, and I said, "How's he doing?" He said, Doc says, many of his organs are failing. And he basically said, "There's no hope." And my wife, the biologist, she knew. She said, "Okay, we're going to have to pull the plug." And we did.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jude DiMeglio Trang. I'm an author and observer of human need in society. This Gift of Need podcast seeks to address the overlooked power of need and how it shapes our behavior in relationships and in society. And my goal is to whet your appetite and to get you thinking about your needs in a different way and how they're not burdens, but they can be opportunities and gifts. And I do that with an amazing variety of guests with different backgrounds and careers, like my guest today. Harris Insler is with me from New York City, and we're going to be talking about why we need to educate students about addiction. Harris is a retired 7th to 12th grade teacher, athletic coach, dean of students, and founder of the Humane Organization for Substance Awareness, DBA, the ZAC Project. Hi, Harris.
Hi, Jude. How are you? Long time no see, huh?
Yeah, it's great to
Wow.
see you. We've been connecting over the years, which we're going to tell people about. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background and career?
Okay. Well, I was born in the Bronx, New York, back in the Fort Apache days. If you've ever seen that movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. I went to school, a city school, CCNY, which was free at that time. And I think it charges a little tuition now. Then I got my BA in English, and then I got married, and my wife had to go to UMass to get a doctorate. So I lived in UMass for a few years. I got another BS in English. No, sorry, in phys ed. And then we both got a job on Long Island, which was close for both of us, which was amazing. We had been trying for years, and we finally did it. And I went to Adelphi where she was teaching, and I got more courses, and I got an MS in reading, which I thought went well with my English degree. And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always knew that I wanted to coach, so to speak. And that led to my teaching career, as Jude said. And it wasn't easy. We were two kids, and and I had so many different jobs just to keep us afloat, especially when we were in Massachusetts, when she was getting her PhD. I took many, many jobs. Menial job.
As one does. When I tell our kids I said, we lived in the ghetto when we were first married. Like, you have no idea what we used to do just to meet the budget at the end of the week, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So, that's my background.
Okay.
And I became a teacher. It wasn't a passion in me, but I knew since I was a kid, I always liked to coach kids in sports because I'm very athletic, or I was. After 5 surgeries, I stopped. And now I just swim, which is the best exercise.
Yeah. Well, and that fits what I know of you, Harris, is that whether it's a coach or a teacher, you're an encourager. That's what you like to do. And so that's a wonderful gift. Today, though, we're going to be discussing Harris's second careers. His starting a nonprofit and educational presentation called It's Not You Until It Is You, and his book of poetry, From Mourning to Life. So, Harris, why don't you start by telling us what the impetus was for you starting the Humane Organization for Substance Awareness, DBA, the ZAC Project. You had a very personal experience in your family with substance use disorder, otherwise SUD, and opioid use disorder, OUD.
Yeah. Before we get to the organization, there are many steps along the way,
Right.
and you know some of them, and we'll elucidate that for our audience. Um, it started obviously when my son Zach actually started when he was in fifth grade. He was like a normal kid, but he couldn't sit still and this and that. And the teacher was an old timer and didn't want to hear about it. So we took him to a neurologist, and he had ADD or ADHD or whatever alphabet they gave him. And he was put on medication for that. And he outgrew it in a couple of years, went on to high school. He was doing okay. He became a musician. He had a band, a ska band with his classmates from high school on Long Island, where we were. And I think he wanted to pursue that, but I knew he would become a good teacher because he was a counselor in a camp. But so senior year, they kind of take it easy on the kids there. But, and he didn't do any kind of substances at all until the second semester of his senior year. We found out he had some beer now and then. And we also found out he started smoking pot. Now, as a child of the 60s and 70s, a lot of myself and my friends went through that. And we figured, okay, we said, you can't smoke it in the house. I don't care where you go. Just don't do it in the house. Okay. And my wife was very adamant about that. We had a little garage. We went in there a lot of times. But then I didn't understand why he did that, why he smoked. But we'll get to that soon. He was a really bright kid. Not everybody, no, all parents say that, no, but he was pretty smart. The only problem was he liked to read what he liked to read, not what he was assigned. So he just ambled along, not being outstanding, just making sure he passed everything, was average. And the subjects he liked, he got 95. The subjects he didn't, he got 75% of the grade. So, of course, the instrument he chose was the drums, which didn't help our sanity. And we got complaints from neighbors because the band would come down to our basement to practice. And I became a roadie for his trips. Anyway.
I have to interject. I cannot tell you how many of my friends and relatives who are drummers are ADHD. There is a way in which they just have to get that out, right? And the drums were made for them, I guess.
I see that now. You just put it together. So he barely graduated because he could talk himself out of the story he told one teacher. I don't have the time to repeat it, but okay, Zach, it's okay. In fact, it's in the movie I made, which we'll talk about that too. So he did graduate. Of course, he could have gone to Adelphi where my wife taught, and we wouldn't have to pay tuition. But he went to UMass. I guess he wanted to be where we were, or so, who knows. And the first couple of weeks, I think it was after a month, he had this thing where he fainted. Something like vagal thing. I don't know exactly. Took him to the infirmary. He hurt his neck, but he wasn't out for long. We found out. And he had some pain in his neck. And guess what they gave him?
Let's see. 3 choices: opiates, opiates, or opiates.
Correct. And not just one, not just 2 or 3. I think they gave him a full prescription for a month. Never found out. But, I should have sued them right away, but I didn't. Anyway, so he went through his first year at UMass. And of course, once he found the drug, he flunked out. came home. We got him into Adelphi. We didn't know what was going on.
Mm.
They didn't tell us because it's HIPAA laws. So he went to school. I think he went to the dorms. He didn't want to stay at home, which gave him more freedom to do what he had to do to support his habits. And we got feedback. Now, she was the a dean at that time. So she got some information that he wasn't doing well. And we said, come on, Zach, you can do better. He says, I'm okay. Sometimes he'd come home and we find him asleep in the car. And I'm not thinking heroin. I'm thinking, well, maybe some friend gave him a pill. And back then, there was no fentanyl, as far as I knew. So I said, okay, look, I've had friends, myself, experiences. We've tried different drugs back then when I was at, 18, 19, 20 in college. But what saved me was that I only did anything on the weekends. Week was for school and work. So that helped me be on the straight and narrow, so to speak.
Well, and
So-
also let me interject here.
Sure.
The drugs that you and friends were taking in the 60s and 70s were 1/10 or 1/100th the strength of what they are today, starting with pot. So there was a big difference. The rate of addiction compared to starting to with something that is so extremely potent is very, very different than 50 years ago.
And we'll talk about what it does to the brain eventually.
Yeah.
Especially people in certain age groups. So, and I used to blame myself because maybe I was in denial that he was doing heroin, or I didn't understand this disease, which wasn't a disease then. You're just a dirty addict. So, and that was, we'll talk about my grieving journey after, but that was there. He also failed out of Adelphi. And it came to the point where in 2005, in the spring, he came to us and he said, I need help. And he told us what he was doing. So we took him to the hospital and they confirmed. And we found a program over that summer, in summer of 2005, where I had to drive him every day. He'd get tested, urine tests. We tested him at home. He had therapy, group therapy, individual therapy. It's like a whole day from like 9 to 5. And I'd pick him up, we go home. So that went on through the whole summer. And we tested him home also when he came home, and he was free. He was drug free. My wife got him at a job at Delphi Tech because he was very good with computers even back then. He knew his way around. And he was doing okay. We let him get an apartment nearby because we wouldn't give him the car because he did wreck one car. Luckily, he was alive. I mean, he was really messed up. And he was doing okay. So the end of in December of 2005, after the program and after he was doing okay and doing his job, a friend, actually a social worker in Adelphi who was our neighbor from across the street, she said, I know this psychiatrist. He deals with people who have addiction problems. Goes there and he said, Zach said to us, we decided, the doctor decided that I need to get out of this area. Okay, what did I know? He's a doctor. This is what he does. So we decided to go up to a suburb of Boston because his bandmate from high school was at BU still. So we figured he'd have someone, he could talk with and everything. So we sent him up there, and as far as we knew, he was doing okay. He got into a temp agency, got work, and this went through. He came back to see us, during the holidays. And he also came back in March to visit us and his sister. And when he came in, that was like the first March 5th or 6th. Um, he was wearing, when he came home, he had short sleeve, and I looked at his arms. I looked for signs, no tracks or anything. So I'm saying, is this it? I hope so. So we had a very, very good weekend, great weekend. She was at Columbia, and he went back to where he was, because that next week we found out he had a permanent job. Someone wanted him to work. I don't know what it was. He just said, I got a job. Fine. So that was the 13th, which I think was Sunday. So we thought, okay, be in job Monday. I go back to school on Monday. I was the dean then. And I got a call in my office from the suburb where he lived, from their emergency room. Mr. Insler, you better come up quick. I said, why? I said, we had to send your son to Boston General, Mass General. So I made that trip in the speed limit, over the speed limit. Got my wife out of Adelphi, and she was the dean then. Yeah, so she could just leave. I think my daughter, we told on the way there, and she would take a plane and come and meet us. So we went to the hospital right away, and the doctor said, look, his organs are failing. He was on life support, of course. And I said, look, let's give him a little space. Who knows? I don't know if they knew about naloxone. I don't know what they knew. I didn't know about it myself. So next morning, Rachel had come. Next morning, we got up in the morning, went over to the hospital, and I said, how's he doing? Doug says, many of his organs are failing. And he basically said, there's no hope. And my wife, the biologist, she knew. She said, okay, we're going to have to pull the plug. And we did. So we'll get to the nonprofit, but I didn't know what to do. It took me, we came back, we mourned for 8 days, and then we both went back to work, which in hindsight saved me.
Yeah, that's a common thought when people say, "Oh, just stay off of work or whatever." No, you would go crazy. Well, Harris and I met because of this common link of losing our only sons to an opioid overdose. My book, Opiate Nation, wasn't released until 2019, but before that, then Harris had all these years and things progressing, and Harris started Voices from the Opioid Crisis, a film project of interviews with families who had lost children to the opioid epidemic, and these Ghosts Must Be Heard podcast. And by this time, by what was it, 2017, Harris, when you started those?
I started in fact, I wrote this down because I started the website in 2020, basically.
Oh,
But
okay.
I had gone to a grieving group
All right.
years before, and I wanted to see how I was doing in terms of grief.
Yeah.
So I got to know these people very well. I stayed in that group for 7 or 8 years. And then I got an idea. I want to make a movie about that. That was the first thought. But as I was in this group, I started to think, you know what? I can't limit a movie just about him. I've got to include all these people. And I had so many hours of interviews. And after that, I had people kind of handling me. Like I didn't know what to do about technology or anything, or
Mhm.
making a film, or what equipment to get. So I did all that. I got the equipment, and I did part one of the movie, which was just about Zach. It was like a character study. And then I went on to all those people, getting them, but I didn't finish that part yet. So that's my next project.
Well, I think here, let's take a little pause, and I think it'd be good to briefly clarify the difference between the terms grief and mourning. We use them interchangeably, and it's no big deal, but grief is what we feel on the inside. It's our internal emotional response to loss, and it usually consumes our thoughts. It is very personal. It also affects our physical bodies in many ways and lasts for a very unspecified length of time. And you always hear this, grieving is a process, right? The 5 stages of grief and loss, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, best book in the world. Now, mourning is what we do on the outside. It helps us process our grief and share our feelings with others. And it's the outward expression of our inward grief. And it takes as many forms as there are people. So, what Harris is starting to tell us is that after Zach's death, how he processed his grief. So, the grief group is a great way. But was there anything in particular that helped you on your grief journey as you moved from the internal to those external acts of mourning?
Well, one thing that helped was listening to people, to getting their stories.
Mm.
And that started this snowball effect, because I didn't do anything for like 6, 7 years about anything. I was just teaching, coaching, and being able to have some joy in my life. And my wife worked very long hours. My daughter was doing okay. You know, we all have our, the funny thing is, right after he died, I said, I don't need a shrink. 1 month later, so, and I'm still seeing the same guy. In fact, I had a meeting today with him. Anyway, so after that, someone said, you know what, you should do a podcast. So I said, okay, these ghosts must be heard. I was able to fumble through all the technical stuff. I had a very good former student of Adelphi, whom I was in a class with as an old guy. And he became my editor and script supervisor. Really talented kid. And he's still working in film to this day. And I speak to him every so often. I have other students that I use, and I still speak to them.
Mhm.
I have the support of a lot of, I have to be on the socials, obviously. And a lot of my former students are my friends now. I say kids. They're 40 and 50, and it's like, whoa, it's getting weird here. Yeah. So then we get to, it's not you until it is you. Like for years, since 2020, when I first showed my movie to my friends and relatives and an audience, they said, why don't you go talk to kids? I said, no, they told me to do a website, then they told me to do a podcast. And guess what? 23, I started my presentation.
Mhm.
Not you until it is you. And I don't get proud. I have no, yeah, everyone has an ego, and it's nice to hear good things. But I don't know, my ego is like sublimated or something. And I don't understand it, because my shrink says you can't take criticism, you can't take praise very well. And I can't. I don't know why. That's just who I am. So I've got very good results from the students, because I give them a short survey. I also learned how to do the QR code, which I had my nephew who helps me a lot. And I pay him because he's working. He didn't want to make any payments because he was Zach's closest cousin.
Yeah.
And said, no, you got to get something. So took care of that. And then I did the presentations. I actually got scheduled a couple for fall semester. Now the book, From Mourning to Life.
Well, wait, I want to back up a minute
Yeah,
and tell
sure,
folks. So
sure,
it's
sure.
not you until it's you is this interactive educational program that Harris developed, and it's designed primarily to educate 7th to 12th graders and other affected populations about substance use disorder and opioid use disorder. You offer it free to schools and other programs, and that you started a nonprofit, the nonprofit that we talked about. So you're going to tell us about this, the students. They seem to be engaging with your approach of the stories and open dialogue when you present this. And do you get the feeling that even in this day and age, are you surprised by what they do or do not know about how drugs affect the brain and the physical aspects of addiction?
I was very surprised because when I went back to I go to my old school every time, every year. And the last thing I was there, April, we did just health classes. And I wasn't shocked, but I know they teach some of this stuff. But I have a PhD basically in what I know because I am hooked into governmental agencies, universities,
Right.
forensic scientists. And I take these webinars. So what comes out in the news now, I knew a year before. So I know I have expertise. The problem with getting into schools, I don't have a degree. So it has to be word of mouth. And I've been doing this for like 2.5 years now, and I'm getting a little traction now. So it takes it's very, very long process. And I know what I'm doing works
And
because
the kids and you were talking about the health class. So are they up on the latest information or even the basic things about, I mean, because I know that our son had no clue when Purdue Pharma and Oxys came out, and I guess they were in a lot of parents' medicine cabinets, and our son started that in junior high school. It was to them the same kind of party drug like maybe well, pot, or I don't know what you would have said from 50
yeah.
years ago. They had no clue. And interestingly enough, we have a friend who's a malpractice lawyer. And even right after our son died, which was 2014, he was insistent that this is what Purdue had put out and what they'd fed to the doctors, the lie that they
Yeah,
got from, quote, a study, which was also a lie,
of
that
course.
if you had pain, you could not become addicted to opioids. So when our friend said that to us, I said, where did you hear that? We had all of this information had not come out. Sam
Right. You
Quinones's
didn't
book
know.
Dreamland came out in 2015. Dope Sick came out after that, and the whole thing broke with Purdue Pharma. So you would think over a decade later, kids would understand this, right? So what have you found?
Well, I found that it's funny that you mentioned about what they knew about it. Even Zach, he told us after he had been getting high that he found a website way back then, 2005, 6, that said how to use heroin safely.
So now, did he start with pills?
No, he started smoking. And then I don't know how he got involved with heroin. I have no
You
idea.
mean smoking heroin or
No, smoking
smoking
pot.
cigarettes?
Just
And oh,
smoking
and
pot.
pot.
Yeah, he never smoked cigarettes.
Well, you did
And
mention that they gave him, well, we know how he started. Wait a second. You said that
yeah,
and he was in the hospital in that time, whatever happened to him, that they gave him, a prescription for
right, right.
opiates.
He was
And at that point, dentists were giving 100 oxys to kids for having your wisdom tooth pulled,
right,
for
right.
which
Oh,
when we had ours done, you just, they
salt
give you
water.
Yeah, they'd give you 2 pills, and we knew not to take them because they'd make you throw up. So there you go. That was your son's entry, because once you have those pills for a week, forget it. You need them.
This was from the school's, wasn't a doctor, it was the school's, whatever you call it, the first aid in the school, at UMass. You know,
Whoa.
that's where he got it from. Not a hospital, not a doctor. Now, they probably have a doctor there.
A
Well,
clinic.
who knows?
Right.
Yeah, it's the school's first aid thing, whatever.
Well, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that thing about the website that he found somewhere. Oh, I know how to do. Yeah, well, that didn't work out too well, did it, Mr. Zach? Anyway, um,
And so the
so
kids today are still, you think they're still getting that
I
information, or?
they're getting kind of general information. Um, I think the it's much better now. I don't know about the polysubstances. I don't know how much they center on that, but I talk about that. The weird thing is he was doing it with a friend. They were in cahoots,
Mm.
and I found out later on that his friend moved to the West Coast and he joined a religious group. And I think he kicked the habit, as they said back then.
Mm.
I don't know. I've lost track of this guy. I wasn't very happy with him, obviously, because they were in cahoots, but it wasn't his fault. I understand that. And yeah, so it's been a long road. As long as I'm healthy, I'll keep doing this. And that's, as we get older.
You
And it is.
clearly, you know there's a need, and you have your gift is the ability and the love to coach and to encourage. And so it's just it's so cool to me to see how the different ways that these losses that we've had that were great needs in our lives have again turned into gifts that we can offer to others by looking at them as an opportunity that's been, what are you going to do with it? And so I'd like to go on to, before we close, you've just published your book of very personal poems, From Mourning to Life. And that's not mourning sunshine, that's mourning and grieving to
No,
life.
you are.
And you've arranged the poems in a linear progression from your early days of mourning Zach to the present. So can you describe the progression and the changes in
Sure.
your perspective that happened
Sure.
as you wrote them?
So I had written these poems after Zach died, obviously, and I put them away somewhere. I never thought I was going to be publishing anything. I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always written poems in college, throughout my life. So these were there. And because I was so busy with, the website, the podcast, doing stuff with social media, the whole, takes a lot of time away. And I said, so after I did this past school year, in November of 25, I said, no, maybe I should take these old poems out and see what I can do with them. And I found they weren't in any order, but I saw my own progression where it was, like the doom and the gloom and the crying and the cycles of I should have done this, I should have done that. Even though I didn't know anything about this disease, blaming myself for what happened. I was not a good father. I didn't do my job. I didn't protect my family because it affected us all. And as I went on, and I think it was going to the grieving group, it started a different kind of poem. And I took my cue from a lot of what some of the others had gone through. I think I was the veteran. I was the one who had lost a child long ago in the past compared to what they had gone through. And what amazed me was how there was a woman 6 weeks. She came to the group. She let out her story, and I said, "Wow." I waited over maybe 8 years to tell anybody, except family. So the poems now started to change into, well, maybe it's not as, I'm drowning in tears anymore. And that was the middle section. And the last section, which gave me the progression that I came through, gave me the power to write that, you know what? I'm still alive. There are things I can do. We actually went on trips and stuff when she had time off, because I had stopped teaching, but I just coached until the COVID. And so these poems, I wrote a poem called From Mourning to Light, and I was deciding what should I call the book, to Mourning to Light, Mourning to Life. And I made it From Mourning to Life, and let that be the last poem, which showed the light has finally shone upon me. And
Well,
I just wanted to say one more thing about the kids that I say in school. They get a survey, QR code. I get the surveys. I go through every single one. And statistically, 98% were positive. Maybe, I think 80 to 85% learned something new. So I said, I'm on the right path. And now I have 2 researchers working with me, with my program.
wow.
They were experts in it, in addiction. One is a prevention, and they all have degrees up the all these degrees. One works at Einstein Med. The other one has an organization. So I'm actually having a Zoom with them in a few weeks to see what we can do together.
Great.
So I'm hopeful that I can get to more schools. And as my religion taught us, your main goal in life is to heal the world. And that's
well, I love the fact, Harris, that you've allowed your deep sorrow and your need to become a gift that you can offer to others who are facing the same need in their lives. This any kind of deep grief or sorrow. Losing a child's got to be the worst, and this is the gift of need in a nutshell. It's like stretching out your hand to help someone else climb up a deep a steep cliff, right? So let me ask, as we close, what do you think is the most important thing for parents to understand about drugs and addiction?
First of all, they have to understand that addiction occurs in the midbrain. The midbrain is your survival brain. Your midbrain is where the dopamine takes effect. So when someone is addicted, that decision-making in the cerebral cortex is gone. The only thing that matters is that part of the brain which says you need to survive. And what do you need to survive? You need that drug. And parents don't understand this unless they're scientists. The health teachers, they know, dopamine is in the brain. No, it's very specific. And that's why it's so hard to beat. Because addicts see drugs as survival, and they don't even understand. It's that midbrain, because your conscious brain is gone. So that's a big message for everybody out there.
Yeah. And that not only do their kids need to know, they need to know about addiction. You could say, oh man, my kids are never going to be addicted. We're in this good lifestyle or whatever. As you and I can testify, this crosses all socioeconomic barriers, and the parents need to know, and they need to talk with their kids about what they know. Their kids know more than they do. They probably have bad information because they're talking to their friends and they're now getting it off their phones. So they need the true information, and they need to talk about it. And, there's things like that, you and I look back and go, doggone it, I wish I would have known, So that's what we're offering other people out of the ashes of our lives and our sons' lives. We can give this gift to other people. And so I really, really thank you, Harris, for making the time to be with us today, for all that you're doing, and to talk about how the needs our kids and families have for education about a life or death problem. And it became an opportunity for you to share the passion that was born out of your need, which has become a gift to individuals, to schools, to community. And it brings joy and fulfillment to us all, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's good to see that it's working. The only thing about the parents you just asked,
Yeah.
I think they need to know more than the kids need to know. Because if they were educated and they could look at the signs, and there are plenty,
Yeah.
I think they would be able to handle this kind of problem that might crop up to their own kid and maybe save their own kid's life.
Yeah. Well, folks, you can check out Harris's advocacy work at the Zach Project by going to voicesfromtheopioidcrisis.com. It'll be in the show notes, the links, and also share your story of losing loved ones from SUD or OUD. He's got still got places for you to share. You can also get Harris's book of poems, From Mourning to Life, at your local bookstore or on Amazon. And please leave him a review.
Only on Amazon you can get it.
Only on Amazon, okay. And leave a review. Those reviews count for us indie published authors. It makes a huge difference. So, all right, folks, the great music you're hearing was written and performed by Gabe Cabanda of Cabanda Music. Excellent, creative, energetic music. You can find him on any streaming service. Engineer is Ray Engineering of 3rd Street Productions in Tucson, Arizona. A great guy. He does a ton of work for me and for this podcast. And please consider following and rating and sharing this podcast and subscribing to the new Gift of Need YouTube channel and my free Substack newsletter. So leave a comment for me or question for Harris and a review. We'd love to hear from you. Bye.